Well, it is that time of year where the garden is bountiful. Wouldn't you say, Batavia?
I would.
Is yours just through the roof with stuff coming out of it and you don't know what to do?
First week of August? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But we need to know how much to preserve. I just thinking, and just keep it brief because we'll get into it in a little bit. But do you ever find yourself preserving more than you would need to?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. That's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, are you saying like the end result of what I've preserved is more than I need, or taking on a preservation project that's bigger than what I really need to?
Both, to
Both.
be honest.
Yeah.
Absolutely both, man. It's a daunting task to take on, and I've got to do it right now.
hmm
I've got 20 pounds of tomatoes I got to do something with. So,
I've
well,
not wrapped my head around coming into this garden season's preservation season. 'Cause it was light work last year.
yeah.
Like I,
Well, we both had
yeah,
mentioned that on the show.
yeah.
Yeah, and for me, it wasn't like I didn't wrap my head around it. I just kind of slammed my head through the door and just got to work.
hmm
I didn't know any
hmm
other way to do it. So, but look, before we get too deep in it, because I can tell we're about to fire it off, let's do this. Welcome back to the Backyard Gardens podcast, everybody. I am your host, Ben, and I am with my co-host, Batavia. Say hi. If you'd like to support the show, you may do so by becoming a subscriber on Apple or Patreon. You can buy some seeds from us. We have a deal going on right now. If you use the link below, that you will if you buy 2 packs of seeds, you will get a free pack of seeds. So do that. It is time to plant your fall gardens. And if you think you're going to be late, we have direct sowable stuff for your fall garden as well. So never fear. We got your back. And also, you can come join us on YouTube. Please come see us on YouTube. Drop a comment, leave a like, and subscribe because we want to open this up for everybody. And even our subscriber episodes, we're almost there to where we can open up the subscriber episode videos to people on there as well. So we look forward to seeing you there. Okay. That was a mouthful. I feel like I say it different every time.
Good job.
Yeah. All right. So I guess the idea here, and this is where I think sometimes gardening can be a little bit tricky, is it's like we want to be, we want to have bountiful harvest, we want to have plenty of food, but also we don't want to be wasteful, and we want to make sure that everything's getting used. And if we don't think that way, I really think we should. So, in the lights of canning, there's going to be too much sometimes.
hmm
So it's like, how do we get to be realistic about what we actually need? And I hesitate to say the word greedy, but like not be like food preservation greedy.
Yeah. I've seen based on the interweb, there are people that may do like big grocery hauls, once a month, depending on, the size of the family and the store. It could be like once every couple of months. They very likely goes to the store and pick up things in between, but kind of the bulk of their purchases. When I was growing up, we used to go to the grocery store once a week. And I don't have like a set, kind of every Thursday I go to the grocery store. It's basically if I'm out of something that's fresh, that normally we eat fresh is when I go. But it's interesting because as a part of growing your garden, especially if you're going to be focusing on preserving as well, you're not just planning out for what you're going to eat for the next week, right? For the next 2 weeks, for the next 3 weeks. And even when we growing up used to shop every week, it wasn't as if we were just eating from week to week. It was like
Right.
restocking on staples and such. But it definitely requires more discipline and a longer kind of memory, and longer kind of thought around what you're going to be eating. I have a tomato sauce story that I'll tell once we get to that portion of the episode, but it's all wrapped up in this,
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I mean, well, first of all, I haven't been in a grocery store in 2 years. Can you believe that?
Is that because someone else is doing the grocery shopping, or you're having it delivered, or?
Yeah, we got delivery, bro. So where we live is like it's a tourist trap. And
Mm.
dude, you go in there, it's crazy in the summertime. It's like, kids and people from out of town, they're all fighting, and then there's women in thongs walking around drunk and all kinds of stuff. It's ridiculous. So we pay a very small fee, and we estimate roughly about 2 hours a week going into the
Mm-hmm.
grocery. It's crazy. And
Yeah.
but when it comes to that, it's like, like you said, looking out into the future, it's really hard to do. But I would say it's easier to look back into the past and say, like, what do we eat? What is something that we eat a lot of? What would we like to eat a lot of? How can we handle that? And then start to build your plan there. So there's a lot of, and we're going to give you a formula for it too. So never fear, ladies and gentlemen. We've got you covered on all aspects of this. But it's one of those things where it's like, you eat a lot of green beans, so go for it. But if you don't eat a lot of green beans, then don't, or maybe you want to start, so you can do stuff like that. One of the things is also like, do you even like some of these foods canned? But we're not necessarily talking about canning here. We're talking about canning, freezing, dehydrating, you name it. That's what we're referring to across the board. So we got to keep a lot of different aspects in mind. And what I'll say during this part of the episode, and I'm not going to harp on it, but if you're getting into food preserving and you're worried about canning, just do it, because it's a totally different thing. And when we start to get into like how long things last, it's a total game changer. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I was kind of stuck on what's the new thing that people use where it's a freeze drying. So I don't have a freeze dryer. I've never had freeze food that's been freeze dried,
Yeah.
frozen dried. Um, but put that aside, because it's been said that whatever you're freeze drying will taste like it did when it was fresh. So again, don't know
Oh,
that
that's
to
not
be the
true.
case, but I do know that everything that you're preserving will taste differently using other methods than it would if you were eating it fresh. If you're taking the fresh produce from, or herb or fruit from your garden, and then consuming it, preparing it and consuming it. So when you say, like, do you really like, you know, canned green beans? Do you like frozen green beans? Like, sometimes there's some level of trial and error. Some of us, as you mentioned, when you look back in the past, have experience with these foods being prepared from that starting point, from the can, from, the freezer. So we kind of know, like, I'm a big fan of frozen green beans, probably more so than canned green beans, as an example. But
Well, like for us, I mean, I like to freeze stuff. It's easy. It's relatively mess free,
mhm,
and it's faster. I hesitate, but it is faster than canning.
start to finish, yeah.
But the issue is we get a lot of hurricanes here. And with that comes power outages, with up to the most I've ever gone without power is 3 weeks. So, kiss it goodbye. An average, when we get a decent storm here, it'll be, a week without power, about average 5 days, 5 to 7 days. And I'm not paying for a generator to put into my house just for this purpose, because that's the only reason why I would need a generator. I don't care about anything else. I tell my family, suck it up. This is how they did it back in the day. You just went back to to the 1800s. Cool. But with that said, all that food goes bad. So we try to keep a balance of what are we going to do. And part of that is your plan that you need to make. So, we get hurricanes, you may get freak hailstorms, tornadoes, stuff like that, whatever. If you get power outages and stuff, then you may need to tweak what you're doing and kind of not rely heavily on the frozen foods. So when I lived up in New England, for instance, we never had power outages hardly. And if we did, it was in the middle of winter. You could just put the stuff out in the snow. So we froze everything. But here we don't do that as much. So you want to keep these things in mind as you go through and work through it.
Yeah, I mean, I think um, I've had maybe power went out for maybe hours since I've lived here.
Mm-hmm.
And it probably happened more often growing up. I just can't quite remember it. I don't ever remember like food going bad. That would happen if it was like the freezer stopped working and we didn't realize it until, the
Yeah.
food had gone bad, that kind of thing.
And that's like a freak
Um,
accident. That's not a
yeah.
regular occurrence. If you got a freezer that goes out all the time, you need to get a new one.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So I definitely do think that it's a luxury for me that up until this recording, it's not anything that I even plan around when it comes to what happens if something goes wrong with the freezer, um, and I think that allows me as a luxury again to be able to choose how I'm going to preserve something, and so if you are in the camp of you're not as concerned about kind of again the electricity of it all, then it is what's first and foremost, what will you enjoy the most? So how will it be preserved where you'll enjoy it the most? But then very close second is what's the most likely way you're going to use it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I think about like some of the things I have preserved through like vegetables are a lot easier when it comes to freezing because there's not a lot of thought that needs to come out. You really can take vegetables out, put them in the refrigerator, and be able to use them that for dinner if you want. If you took them out in the morning, meat is a whole different story, right? So I think that if you have to take out multiple components when it comes to you're making meals with multiple components, that takes a little bit more work. So this is like it. This is unique to you. You and your family are the only ones that know kind of the way you move and the way you navigate. Real quick note: I'm really glad that you added what you want to eat more of, which again is going to tie to my tomato story.
Yeah, well, there's a specific reason for that. So, and I think that food preservation is a journey.
Hmm.
Once you start, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. And I can tell you that if you really start gardening, a lot of our listeners have big gardens and stuff like that. So, kind of preaching to the choir, but just in case, you get so much produce that you got to figure out what to do. And people
Yeah.
don't take the amount of produce when you have extra that they need to get it off your hands. That's just the cold hard facts. I bet that if you were like, hey, like we got 50 pounds of carrots this year. If we were
Hmm.
like, hey, you want 5 pounds of carrots? They'd be like, no. But if I bet if I put them in and said 5 pounds of carrots is $1, they'd buy them up. You know what I mean? It's just something about that money transaction
Yeah.
that makes it feel good. But bringing up the carrots, my first year, I had a bunch of carrots and I didn't know what to do with them. I had no clue. I had never thought about canning them or anything. And so we canned a couple cans and we ended up liking it. So this year we went in deep. I've got another batch to do coming up. So, we've got probably 10 to 15 cans now that we can use in the future. So we know we can do that. And it's something that evolves over time and you're going to find out like, hey, I really like this. I want to do more of it. And then that's when you start tailoring your gardening plan a little bit different each
Hmm.
year and you get more
Hmm.
effective at what you do.
Yeah. I didn't preserve any green beans, again, as the example last year. And I am trying to get my head around how many green beans I'm expecting this year because I would like to put some away,
Mm-hmm.
preserving would equal putting some away. And it is, again, one of the vegetables that I grew up on that I enjoy tremendously. And there's a little bit of sadness to like for them to go away with the garden season knowing there are other things that I keep around, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. It
Good.
does.
I'm glad it does.
All right. So at this point, I think we need to get into more of the formulas of canning. And this is just very brief, but just to give you an idea of what we're looking at here. So, Batavia's talking about green beans. If you can a pint of green beans, that's going to be roughly 2 servings of green beans, right? So when we can green beans, we do a quart of them. The quart's the big jar, right? Yeah. So
32
we
ounces. Yeah.
do a quart, and we'll probably and the reason why we do a quart is because we'll open the jar, we'll eat them one night, and then we'll redo them again, or we'll put half the jar back in the fridge. tomato sauces and stuff like that. 1 quart equals 1 pasta dinner for 4 people. Okay. Now, actually, do you want to tell your pasta story now? Your
Yeah.
sauce
So
story?
I was talking to a good girlfriend who I've gone to the farmer's market. Remember, the last couple of years, I've been playing around with the skill, the act of canning tomato sauce and tomato products. And I've picked up seconds, which are, a commonly referred to term that at farmers markets, at farms, they will sell maybe not the prettiest tomatoes. There may be some, irregular, shapes or something along those
Basically, my
lines.
whole harvest.
Yeah, exactly. And normally they're going to be sold at a discounted rate compared to the pristine tomatoes that are on their stand, right? And so I could get a box of tomatoes. And what I learned very quickly a few years ago is unless you're doing like, whole tomatoes or diced tomatoes, if you're doing sauce, you need quite a bit of tomatoes to make the sauce, right? The actual quantity. And my garden wasn't producing that quantity at the same time. So, anywho, I was telling my good girlfriend this last weekend, I was talking about the garden, and I said, it's interesting. I don't eat as much tomato sauce as I thought I did. And so she's been teasing me for 2 summers about how I never need to can another jar of tomatoes. Like I had enough sauce for the rest of my life. And it's interesting because it very much is I canned enough if I would have made a plan to actually eat it regularly. Right. So I'm a party of one for almost all of these meals, with the exception of maybe if I'm making some like spaghetti for a holiday or something. Um, so I looked back and it goes back to the listener that commented on a YouTube episode when we were talking about, I get the titles mixed up. Was this the cost saving one? This is the you have food at home comment, right? This
Yeah,
is being mindful of, hey, you may want tacos from your favorite taco joint, but look at what's in the garden, look at what's on the shelves, look at what's in the
absolutely.
freezer, look at what's in the refrigerator. And I've realized that, especially when I've canned a whole lot one year, canned a little bit the next year, canned a whole lot the following year, and still trying to figure out all of the math around it. I have tomato sauce that I canned diced tomatoes last year, almost no sauce last year, and sauce from the previous year, which I still have. And for me, and I told her, I kind of always want meat with my tomato saucy type products. So guess what happens? I don't have canned meat, not in that way. I need to remember to take out of the freezer the
Yeah,
meat that's going to go with the sauce that I have. And so as soon as I think about it, I'm like, oh, I should have taken it out. Don't take it out. So there's one more week that passes that I'm not eating it. Another week that passes, another week that passes it. And so I did get a chance because I came up with the argument later to tell her, well, yeah, clearly I've canned a lot of tomatoes, and because I wanted to really to get like that skill under my belt, because it is a skill, right? And it's time, sensitive too, or it takes a lot of time to do it. But there's also the bigger picture of being very intentional about consuming the things I grow, consuming the things I preserve. Tomato sauce is a great example of that.
yeah. And I used to can tomato sauce, and we stopped. We don't
Mm.
can sauce at all anymore. The only thing I can when it comes to tomatoes are whole tomatoes, because what we do is we take it and then so the reason why I changed it is I looked at it and I said, okay, when I make a batch, it takes a lot of tomatoes. But when I
Mhm.
can a pint of tomatoes, I get I can stretch them a lot farther. So what we
Yeah.
ended up doing is we actually found a good recipe. Maybe at some point Batavia can remind me and we'll give it on the subscriber episode. And I adjusted the way that I eat pasta sauce. So instead of
Mhm.
a very, very tomatoey pasta sauce, we use a lot of other vegetables and also tomatoes and a good portion of them. But we were able to make this simple sauce that we could create that would give us that flavor we wanted. So, a lot of times pasta sauce is like reminiscent of like ragu or something like that, or prego or whatever, really heavy. And so we went and moved to the lighter. And so what we did is, instead of getting, maybe 4 jars of pasta sauce, now we get upwards of 15 to 20. We were able to expand it even further in tomatoes, jars of tomatoes. And that's the only way we use the tomatoes. We don't use canned tomatoes any other way. No, I take that back. We do use them for soups and stuff like that as well. So it's a multi-purpose thing, which is very key in all of this. When you start deciding how you're going to do it and what you're going to can, is multi-purpose is king for this, because it makes it so much faster, as you'll find out here in a few minutes.
Yeah, just real quick. I prefer it's the gift that the tomato sauce already being in the jar is. I still enjoy. And there's something about, again, this whole process where I have to add very little to that jar once I open it up. It's just that good. And so I enjoy like it being ready made basically. But again, it's the maybe I'm eating it vegetarian style more. Maybe I am making a note and adding to my calendar to take out the meat that I want to enjoy with the tomato sauce and so on. But again, I have to go through the process to know that this is the way that I operate,
Absolutely.
right? And I understand that now. So this year, I think you and I were talking yesterday offline. I think I accidentally planted more aromas than
Yeah.
I intended. Hi, have you met me before? Yeah,
The
yeah.
question, no, the question was, did you plant the large cherry tomato? I said, yeah. And she said, was it a cherry tomato? And I said, yeah. She goes, damn it, I did it again. And then the conversation ended. That was that was it. It just stopped.
I walked past them today. And I'm like, I should probably take that sign down that has large tomatoes or cherry tomatoes on it.
Yeah. So, and I mean, it's one of those things that you develop over time. Like I said, it's a journey and you figure it out. But one thing we do, and this is up to everybody individually, but one thing that we do is, if we can it, we eat it. And I've choked down some stuff in my day. You know what I mean? And I just tell my son when we do it, I'm like, just eat it, son. It'll make a turd. I'm like, we've worked hard and we've grown it.
That I've thrown away. One was, well, it's not thrown away yet because it's still on the shelves. I did a tomatillo sauce. Like, I love the salsa verde. That's my favorite store-bought salsa. That's my favorite restaurant salsa. I love that style of salsa, and I grew tomatillos years ago and tried to make it, and it was far sweeter than I ever wanted when I actually made the salsa using my homegrown ingredients. And so I actually opened those jars, recanned it, adding some additional things to it like the next season. Still not great. So that's going to be the thing where I'm just going to say nope, can't do it. Second thing I basically am calling time of death on is almost the first or second year I really started getting into canning. I did a I don't know what it's called, like it's cauliflower, peppers, onions, and it was so vinegary and so terrible. I just threw that away this year. Of course, I saved the jars, threw away the lids and the components. Oh, so
I
bad.
was
But
going to
everything
say,
else is like,
when you're like, I don't know what to call it, I was about to be like, it sounds like trash, but
yeah, man. Like yeah, I had even prior years because I've been looking at it for years now. Rinsed it off like maybe.
no.
So there's a level of the quality of the ingredients that went in the jar weren't the best. Remember, a lot of that stuff was store bought.
Yeah.
And then the ratios. This is before I figured out everything that's pickled isn't good.
Yeah, that's a tough lesson to learn, because I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
and we like this year we threw out some pickles that got lost in the cabinet, that we didn't eat, and the reason why we threw them out is because they went bad. So we need to understand how long these things last for, and not everything is the same. So, like for instance, drying has a shelf life. Right now, we've dried a lot of these cherry tomatoes, and what I do is I dry them. I dry the crap out. I dry them for 15 hours at 145 degrees. And then
Dehydrating, which would be different than just air drying, right?
dehydrating.
Mhm.
And then I put them in, once they're done and they're cooled off completely, I put them in a mason jar, but I leave the mason jar open for a couple days so it can still let out, if there's any
Mhm.
moisture, and they will last quite a while. We did a quart mason jar last year, and it's funny. My wife, so here's a difference between me and my wife. She doesn't get it. It doesn't click in her head, right? She looks into the cabinet, and if you're watching this or even listening, leave a comment if you have the same issue with your spouse or your significant other or anything like that. She'll look in the cabinet and she'll be like, damn, there's 4 jars of these dried tomatoes. What am I going to do with them? But what she doesn't realize is we ran out of them by January of last year, or not even, I think it was like November we ran out. And then we didn't have any more for months. And
Ah,
so I
okay.
keep telling her, it's like you put them back and you store them, and that way you have them. You ration them out, and. And so and it's the same with all of these things. Like she'll look at it and it doesn't click in her head. I've often said my wife is the smartest person I know. And I'm not just saying that because I'm madly in love with her. I'm saying that because she is, but she's also not the brightest sometimes. Like some things just don't click right. And that's why we help each other out. But I'm just like, just trust me. We got to keep doing it, because last year, the same thing. We didn't. So I listened to her last year, and that's why I didn't can tomatoes. I listened
Mm.
to her last year, and she said, we have plenty. We had 2 jars of tomatoes. We had 2 jars. We made it into like September, and then we had no more tomato cans. So it's like this year's like, no, we're going to do this. You know what I mean? Like it's time. So you build it up and you do it and you work your way through it, and just understand that, at some point your cabinet's going to be slammed full. But if you've made a quality
Mhm.
plan, you will work your way through it. And my goal is to have leftover jars of tomatoes when I'm canning the next year, to have just a couple, but just to keep them going. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to doomsday prep this, and have a bunker, but I'm trying to have it so I always have them.
See, my that's my forever goal, right? For, God willing, every season I'll have a productive garden, and every season I'll have the opportunity to put away, enjoy fresh, but also put away these things. But I think I haven't decided for sure, because again, this episode is almost the entry to get it together, girl, because it's coming when it comes to preservation season. And I think I got to get through kind of the backlog of it all. I think I have to, including what I can, coming up for this season, what I preserve, what I dry, what I dehydrate. Like, I think I need to kind of break myself of the trying to save it, because what ended up happening the first couple of years was I was basically hoarding it to a degree,
Yeah.
like not wanting to eat it, not wanting to eat it, so I'd have it. And it's like, all right, well, you still got it. You haven't eaten it,
And
So
then what do you
I think
do?
I'm
You know?
yeah, exactly. But now you're almost racing against it, so to speak. And I am when it comes to like aged things. I'm like, it's all wine. It gets better with time, right? So I have no qualms for me personally. I told you, I don't know if I said it on air, the pesto I ate the other day. I didn't say it on air because it's a little bit embarrassing, but hey, it was like 2020. Did I tell you?
Yeah.
2022. Yes, you're listening to this episode in the year of 2025. I had no qualms. I've eaten off of it like 3 or 4 times. The 2022 pesto, cheese, oil, all things that could go rancid.
Canned
I
or
felt
frozen?
frozen. I felt fine, right? And listen, I'm not going to make it a practice,
But you were
right?
nervous as a whore in
But
church after you ate it, didn't you?
say again,
You were
what
nervous
you
as a
did in
whore in
church?
church.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, there was I tasted it a little bit before I started making my lunch that day, and I'm like, "Oh, this could ruin everything.
Yeah.
Just a little taste. Like if it's bad, it's bad, right?" But anyway, that's not a practice I'd like to continue. So that's with the challenge of really trying to get through, even including my other frozen foods. But that's a tangent of sorts. Um, and
Well,
that's something that's super personal when it comes to the way that I move.
it's important. So first of all, next time I say something that I probably shouldn't say in the air, don't make me repeat it. But other than that, No, well, frozen food does have a shelf life. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have eaten that, but still, it really comes down to, and with all of these things, it comes down to how you preserve it, like how well
Yeah.
you do it. So, in the last episode, we gave a recommendation for a freezer. What's it called?
Uh, what is it? A
Uh,
vacuum sealer.
Vacuum sealer. Thank God you said it.
Mm-hmm.
So and I mean, really, that does, because the damage in the freezer is the air that gets in the bag.
Mm-hmm.
If you use a vacuum sealer and you seal it well, it'll hold, I would say, almost twice as long. And I've eaten vegetables that are 2 years old. I
Mm-hmm.
would rather not do that, but I have done that. And that's just part of it. But if you just, there's a trick where you put it in a Ziploc. I shouldn't even say this because everybody's gonna be like, that's what I'm going to do. But you put it in a Ziploc bag, you put a straw in the bag, and then you suck all the air out of it and you seal it. And you're like, oh, that's perfect. Ziploc bags never ever work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Vacuum sealing is the way to go because safety is paramount in all of this, and you really want to be safe when you're doing this. So there's definitely a shelf life for it. I like to keep it around a year, roughly.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I'd like it to be a little bit shorter, but sometimes you just get so much that you can't work through. I mean, there's not so much you can do, and the great thing about it is you can spread out the consumption of these. So I've said many times, like if I eat another zucchini, I'm going to puke.
Yeah.
And I've got two more giant ones that I've got to eat. Stat means now. So what we've done is we actually made zucchini noodle lasagna, and we froze that. So I think we're going
Mm-hmm.
to do another one of those and just be done. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
all of that is part of it. So with canning, there's definitely a shelf life, but it is much, much more extended with it. And I don't know off the top of my head the exact number. What I can say I am comfortable with is about 2 to 3 years, roughly.
Yeah.
What about you?
So, a couple of notes. There are potential safety issues with eating food that's years old from the freezer,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the primary thing you'll run into is the nutritional value that's waned, right? Of course, we all know what freezer burn looks like, which safety isn't the concern. It's just a texture and a desire issue. But I mean, there wasn't a lot of nutrition in that cheese, oil, and basil pesto to begin with, but it sure was good, even 3 years later. Um, but I think again, it's the what do you want to continue to consume? What do you want to feed your family, right? So it was too large of a jar for me just to toss without testing it out. But again, that's just the way I'm wired. So for the canned products, we talked on the last subscriber episode about the company that dominates the jars and in turn dominates the sale of lids as well. Right now, the recommendation is if you're using through Ball, right? Ball preserving. Their lids, their recommendation is for you to consume it within 18 months of canning it, which this ties to the lid. Basically, they're saying, air quote, the guarantee, I'm using that very loosely, is that the food will be safe for up to 18 months after you've canned it. And from everything I've read, and I've read quite a bit on this, the seal holding after that point is the question mark. Now, I've done all of the circles of is something safe that I can last month, and gone through that same circle. So for me personally, 3 years is about where I start to say, is it really worth it? Worth the potential. And again, the 2022 pesto, I do it again. I wouldn't plan for that. That wouldn't be a part of my plan. But if I dig through the freezer and there's some more in there, we're gonna take the chance again.
I just searched it up and it said 1 to 5 years. So
For the lids.
canned foods to last.
Yeah. So
Um,
again, those are two different things, though. One could argue you can't can something without a lid, but I'm just saying
no, I'm
what's on the.
saying with a lid and everything like normal, you know, all that. As long as you get a good seal, very
Mhm.
important that you understand. As long as you get a good seal. Now, with that being said, the video's already come out, but on Sandy Bottom Homestead, I'm just about to do an entire video about getting a good seal on a can, because there is actually a trick, and I don't want to turn this episode into that because we're kind of running short on time. But
Put into Mr. Ball some years back, and I think the up to 5 years from the manufacturing date was how long are, so this is a third bit of information. How long are lids good for, um, that are not used? So all this stuff has, it's been a lot of the stuff you have in your cabinet now, especially if it's new, it's probably from 2019,
yeah,
maybe 2020. So anyway, I mean, I think that this is the reason why it's super technical, but you also want to do your own research. It's no different than what you wouldn't eat that you would buy from the grocery store or not.
yeah,
So you're making your own decisions for your own family.
yeah. It's important to think about it that way too, because you can open a jar of food and not smell anything and still get botulism.
Hmm.
There could be no discoloration and you can get botulism. So you got to be very careful with it. I'm not trying to scare you, but it's just the reality of the situation. And the only
I
go
I
ahead.
had a can of canned beans from the grocery store with the best by date of March 25, and we were in June. I opened them and they didn't look right, and I
Yeah,
threw them away.
exactly.
You know.
And that's the thing. We've done that here too. Like, I mean, we canned butternut squash one year,
Mhm.
and I was looking at it, I was like, man, it's kind of weird. Like,
Mhm.
what's the story here? And then we went to go look at it one day and the top fell off. So we just dumped it,
Mhm. Mhm.
And if
Yeah.
anything turned, like we canned potatoes and we didn't put it called for some kind of acid to put in. I looked at it,
Citric acid.
it was like $40 for the acid for a
Yeah.
little jar of it. And I was like, well, only thing it did is stop the discoloration. So I said, all right,
Mhm.
it's going to discolor. We know that. You know what I mean? So we're good. Now, once you know that, you can move on to the next, task and understand that. But you got to get that good seal. And I will tell you this, I don't store any of my cans with the rings on them.
Neither do
The
I.
rings
I
don't do
don't stack
anything.
them. And I had, when I was moving some things around, last note on this for me is some cans fell off of the shelf and I must have forgotten about them. Like I must have put them back and forgotten about them. And so then fast forward months later, I'm picking up some salsa and it's dented.
Yeah.
And I just, I'm just like, no, it's not
No.
worth it. You see where I draw the line at?
Yeah, you got to draw the line. You
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
do. So, yeah, there's definitely shelf life across the board, and each one goes further and further, or longer and longer. And I will say this:
Mhm.
if I dry those tomatoes and then I take them and then I vacuum seal them, they would last even longer.
Yeah, I'm
So,
very nervous about the act of like the moisture of it all.
yeah, you should
Um,
be, because then I mean,
mhm,
but luckily you'll see mold.
mhm,
But then
mhm.
it just sucks because you're like, well, throw it all out. And I'm here to tell you, it ain't like a piece of bread where you can rip off the mold and eat it. You got to throw it all away. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Shout
yeah,
out to
yeah.
all my people who grew up ripping the mold off the bread. Okay, so now that you're starting to think about it, you've got a little bit of a formula. You got things kind of figured out the way you want. You're starting to get an idea. You're getting your harvest and all that stuff. Now we got to make sure that we understand that, like, okay, this is a huge task that you're about to take on. How do you manage this task appropriately? Because it is daunting. Like I said, I've got 20 pounds of tomatoes I got to go in there. It's going to be a couple hours for me to can those, and it takes time and it takes a lot of effort. So we want to find ways to make this easier, and the best way to do is do it in batches.
Mhm.
Okay, that's important. So luckily, this is where the garden is going to help you with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I want to be and have wanted to be the kind of person that could sit and dedicate, 3 days to preserving it all, but I'm just not that person,
That's
right? And
Instagram
so
sexy, isn't it? I've been in
yeah,
here for three
well,
days
when
canning. My feet are bleeding. My legs are swollen. I'm so hot and sweaty, but I've been canning nonstop and I got everything going. Look at this, y'all. Let me show you what I've got. Click, click, click. That's just the sexiest Instagram thing I ever heard of.
Young Ben edited a video for me last year, we decided not to release it. No, I joke. No, it absolutely isn't that because, some people have commented on some of the things I've done about sharing the preservation. Like I have to be heads down, concentrating, focused. I haven't been able to get to the point where I'm like running a camera and talking. So that's not it. Although when my feet bleed as I'm canning, I am sexy. It's more
Damn
or
right.
less I postpone it because I've made it a big project, which is
Yeah.
again, this is a part of my DNA clearly. I postponed it, I make it a big project, and then things start to turn.
Well, she postpones it for 3 years.
What's that?
You postpone it for 3 years.
Well, there's definitely 3, could be 3 days. It's never 3 hours, could be 3 days, could be 3
Yeah.
weeks. And so what I found is the smaller bits, the batches absolutely help me because it also gets me into the groove of doing it. I haven't preserved anything since last year this time, right? And so I have to get back on that horse and doing it a little bit at a time, especially if there's some fail like with the preserver, whether it's canning, whether it's freezing, any of those things. I've done this a couple of times when I do the I can't think of what they call it, but you pre-freeze it. I'll come back 3 days later like, "Oh, shoot, I forgot about that." You know?
Yeah.
And again, all in all, it's fine, but, again, just a little bit at a time. It's not as overwhelming for me, and I know it's done, right?
Yeah.
That's the piece that I have to adjust to, and that's the reason why this portion of the conversation speaks to me in such a way.
Well, some things are very time sensitive and some
Mhm.
things aren't, right? So like this year I went out there and I pulled a couple kale plants and I had a lot of kale. And you can put it in the fridge, but you're literally going to break it up over a day.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't have long, and really the best thing to do is bring something like that in, can it right away, or preserve it however you want. I froze it in that point, but like we did carrots, so we got our carrot harvest. I I did a bag. I came back. I did another bag a week later. It's been 3 weeks. I got another bag to do. I broke it all up. Same with the potatoes. We did a little bit here and
Mhm,
a little bit
mhm.
there. And those are harvests that all come at once, right? So you look at them and say, like, how long are they going to last? What are they going to do? And then break it down from there. But on the other hand of it, now I'm into to tomatoes. So the thing is the garden helps me because I'm getting flushes of tomatoes and I'm getting them periods of time. So I've got two separate baskets in my house. One basket's older, one basket's newer. I picked the second basket so it was a little bit more green, not
Mhm,
green, but a little bit more. And that way it would
mhm.
ripen over time. So I can do one major batch and then I can come back and do another one. So for instance, this weekend I'll dry, can, and then we'll probably go ahead and make tomato pies this weekend to freeze. So we'll do all of that this weekend. But then I've got a whole nother batch, and then I got a whole more out in the garden to go do. So we're building that up over time.
Once you get to a certain level of quantities, you being organized really does make it easier for you. You don't have to harvest all of your carrots at the same time. You don't have to harvest all of your potatoes at the same
I
time.
do. I have
It's
to. I love doing that. It makes me feel good.
It's so much easier to do that way. You could pick a couple of carrots for dinner, put your hand in the soil and dig out a couple of potatoes for breakfast or whatever have you. But it's a lot easier to kind of clear that space wherever you're growing them. And I love in both of those instances, you do have time is on your side there.
Yeah.
Kale for me lasts in my crisper for quite a while, but here's the distinction that just like all the other vegetables, it's starting to break down as soon as you pinch it off the plant as soon
Yeah.
as you pull the plant
I
up,
mean,
depending on
it'll
how you
get
harvest it.
limp almost right away. Like it'll
Well,
start limping.
my again, I have a whole method where whether it's grocery store kale or for my garden, I can keep it crisp in my refrigerator, but it's at its best as soon as it's picked,
Yeah.
right? So if I'm going to, I haven't, I didn't put away any kale. If I'm going to do that, I should be doing that kale, collards, any of those leafy greens. I want to do it very close after harvesting if I plan on putting it away, if I plan on preserving it.
Right.
Tomatoes are probably it's one of you guys know, one of my top 3 favorites for growing. It gives me the flux every single year. I'm trying to get to the tomatoes before the squirrels get to them. So I am picking them early, which I'm very, very fine with picking things when they blush. But again, the project of it all, trying to get enough tomatoes to start to do something with. Fortunately, I have more in my arsenal this year as I did last year. I have other recipes that don't require a huge, table of tomatoes to work with.
Right.
So this is when you have to also be creative with how you're preserving them. You're making tomato pies, not to eat a bunch, but you're going to freeze a bunch.
Yeah, we'll probably
Love it.
make. I'm imagining we'll make 10 or 15 of them this weekend. And the reason why we do that in such big, well, first of all, big batches are king. Okay. In my opinion, it's go ahead. My canner will hold, I think, 8 or 10 jars. So my goal is to pack that billy goat full.
Hmm.
And then I may not do a second one in that day. I may just stop and, if I can,
Hmm.
and come back. But have you ever heard the saying, don't make a mountain out of a molehill?
I have.
Well, now we're going to make a molehill out of a mountain. Okay, that's what we're doing here. And then we're going to take that molehill and we're going to get in there and we're going to get that mole and we're going to kill its ass as it's eating our garden. So there it is.
It's the
Shout out to all the
worst.
people fighting moles in their gardens. It's a
Oh
it's a
yeah.
big problem, but it's a pandemic of moles. I'm telling you. But I mean,
Hey.
in all seriousness, though, it's just break it down as much as you can and
Hmm.
space it out when you can. And I know you got to find time, and that's why doing small. When I say small batches, we have to understand that you get a basket full of green beans. You don't have to go through that whole basket at once, but don't
Hmm.
just do one can at a time because it's going to drag out forever. Because then there's going to be something else. Because once you start this, you're going to start doing more and more and more and more, and then finally you'll get to where you're getting what you want out of your garden.
Yeah, for pressure canning, I highly recommend look at your manual because their recommendations about how many jars of a product that it's recommended to put inside of a pressure canner at the same time, meaning a minimum,
Yeah,
right? So I encourage you to read that. And again, always do what you feel comfortable doing. I think, green beans, and we should have done a list of kind of longest shelf life after harvesting. Leonard, green beans
Leonard.
are one of those things where, boy, do they trick you.
Yeah.
I put green beans in my salad spinner. I love using my salad spinner in the refrigerator because of the way that it kind of wicks the moisture away from the food. I use it for all kinds of things where I'm storing the food in there.
Do your muscles
And
still
you'll
get
be
sore from using your salad spinner?
say what?
Do your muscles still get sore from using your salad spinner? You remember that? That
I'd
one
like to
year?
deny that.
No, it's like you were spinning so much lettuce that you were like, man, my arms are
I'm in
sore.
better garden shape. That's at the beginning of the season,
Yeah.
dude. It's like I literally walked past a bottle of extra strength Tylenol and I said, thank goodness I'm out of the season where I'm taking, Tylenol every few days
Yeah.
because that's how I was not in garden shape. But anyway, um, you'll put the green beans in the refrigerator. They'll be great day one, day two. And then it's like they're fighting back day four, day five. And it's like, oh, yeah, day five is far too late.
Hmm.
The intention is to use all of these products when they're at their peak or as close to. And we all know that from your garden, it's going to be fresher than anything you're ever going to buy in any grocery store or at a farmer's market in most cases. So green beans would be on my list of try to get through them within 1 to 2 days if you're going to preserve them. That's it.
Perfect.
That's all.
Okay. So you've got all of your stuff for preserving under control. Now you know how much to preserve, or you're going to figure it out. You're going to do a little bit of math with the formula, and then you can come back and then you can make it more manageable for yourself, which I think is the important part of this discussion, which this was actually the whole reason why I wanted to do it was to talk about doing it in batches.
Yeah.
Um,
And last note, if you're not making adjustments based on what you learn from this preservation season to your next year's garden, you're not doing it right.
there it is. And since Batavia got the last word in, let me do this. This show is sponsored by the Backyard Gardens podcast. Just kidding. It's sponsored by the Planner app. It's a sponsor of the show for good reason. We love it. It works great. I just got these new lights over here. If you can see, if you're watching the video, and we have seeds under the shelf, and I wanted to test the amount of light that the lights are putting out. Well, it has a light meter built into the app that uses your phone or tablet's light sensor to give you a reading. So I was able to compare it to my last lights and my new lights, and see that I was in fact getting stronger light in areas that I didn't want, which is what I was doing. That's the thing with the planner app. It does it all. Except for, you know what? If the creator of the planner app would get it so the app would plant my garden for me, I would appreciate it. But between the planning and the looking and the light testing and the organization, you need to get it. The link's below. Use a code to get yourself, I believe it's 25 or 20% off of the lifetime membership, which is very cheap and well worth it. You can use it on your phone, your tablet, and the best part of all, on your PC. And when I say on your PC, I mean it's full blown on your PC and it's very comfortable to use. So check out the Planner app on the Google and Apple Play Store. Ding. Okay, so we got a question.
Okay.
Let me get my mouse to wake up because I haven't used it in a minute. And our
Is it a question of the day?
It is a question of the day. Ellis writes.
Shoot. Hey, Ellis.
Every time, man. Every time. She's on the Facebook community garden page, which is free to join. You may join her. She writes, anyone else in the Mid-South, Lower Midwest, or out here harvesting doorknob cabbages just to keep them from getting moldy? This has been such a wet spring. And then somebody, just as a side note, somebody said, well, I've never heard of a doorknob cabbage. Well, we know what she's referring to. That year when Batavia made fun of me constantly about my cabbages.
Dude, have I sent you pictures of my cabbage this year?
No.
Karma is a you know what, man.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Dude, man.
You got some weak ass cabbages. You need to feed them.
Man, listen. I mean, I could eat it like an apple.
Are they already headed up and ready to harvest?
Yeah, my purple cabbage, my red cabbage are really small. I bought those starts. And then my other cabbage, my green cabbage, it's golden acre. I bought the starts for those as well.
That's a great cabbage. It's a great cabbage.
Yeah, it's done beautiful in my garden in years past, but this year they all were like cylinders. We talked about this very briefly, but I think at that point I said the impact of the heat. The heat is impacting my cabbage, and this is where we are. I've pulled them all. No, I think I have one more there.
It's all about fertilization, man.
When I cut them, boy, it's like a doorknob, and the bell goes.
No, so it's one of those things where I learned finally, because I've worked very hard to get good sized cabbages. It is about pumping them bastards full of nitrogen as much as possible. So Ellis's question, though, let's talk about that. Do you ever get moldy cabbages, Batavia? Have you ever done that?
I think we may be flip flopping the name, but that's the way it's written. So moldy cabbage happened one year, and it was in my fall planting. But generally, no. It's we get a lot of rain over the last 36 hours, but generally we don't have like the downpours that would create this situation. I have seen a lot of people talk about how wet spring was for them, though.
Yeah. So to be honest, I've had every year I get moldy cabbages in the fall and into the winter. And it's because, so it's interesting. If you ever put water on a cabbage, it's like it naturally it's like a natural repellent on it. Have you noticed that? So, I mean, what that tells is a couple things. One, it should be really hard to get mold on it, but yet I still manage to have to fight it every year. And two, well, there is no two. So what it is it's the ground around the cabbage stay very wet. And so what happens is as the cabbage starts to form a head, like I said, I've dealt with this a lot and spent many days contemplating what's happening in my garden. And I figured out that once that head starts to form and it starts interlocking those leaves, it'll trap water in it. So the biggest problem, and it depends on where you get the mold. So you can get it up there around the top You can get it in the crooks of the leaves where there's not a lot of space, and then you can get it at the bottom where the leaves and the ground are all coming in contact. So, man, my eyes dry as hell. So the key is it's always staying wet. So in the wintertime, there's not a whole lot you can do because the water is not really pulling away from it. So what you can do is if you're going to get periods of a lot of rain, put a cover over it. You know, get some kind of like plastic or something and put a cover over it and then go from there. Other than that, you know, it's going to be the key is, and if you have a wet season, is to get those cabbages to grow faster. So get them to grow as fast as possible by feeding them, and then you can get them out. Clear the mulch away from the base of them. Clear the leaves out that are touching the ground and all that stuff. And then that should help with you. But you're going to have to take multiple steps to get on top of it.
Okay. Looks like you're struggling. I don't have
My
much
eye
to
is
add.
killing me, bro.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add is, when it comes to too much water. So I've had, not in recent years, but for a number of years, cabbage cracking based on too much water once they've got to the point of being mature. And those are normal size cabbage, not the doorknob cabbage
Do you
that,
think that it's cracking or it's about to bolt?
no, it's cracking.
Yeah. I've never
Yeah.
really had
And
that.
the previous years I'm talking about, yeah, it's cracking. It is definitely a moment where I've left it in my garden and I could have harvested it. And so I learned from that and I've used a tarp. Like, unfortunately, I had to do it last night for my onions that I just didn't stop to pull, that some of them have already tilted over. The necks are already broken, and I'm just like, "Ah, well, I'll just use those faster," because we had so much rain. So I've used a tarp. I've done that with tomatoes to try to prevent the soil from getting too wet, which we know can
Did it
attribute
help?
to tomatoes cracking. It's helped me. Are you
Yeah.
asking me or are you telling me?
No, I'm asking you, did it help you?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, it's all about the coverage. Like, if you could
Yeah.
come out and still see the soil is wet, then, you're right back where you were. Because it's not about the water getting on the actual tomato itself in that instance. It's about the plant continuing to kinda suck up, if you will, absorb more of that water. Um, the cabbage, I believe it's the same situation. So in both instances, me using a tarp or some plastic has helped and preserved, no pun intended, the vegetable. And I'm talking about a day or 2. I'm not talking about months and months or anything, weeks and weeks or anything like that.
Yeah. I know at one point I had we had rain that this was a couple of years ago, but it was going for weeks and my
Mhm.
compost pile was drenched and I was
Yeah.
really trying to make as much compost as I could. And I mean, you know, it's a little bit different situation, but I took a pallet and laid on top of the compost pile because that was able to block some of the water, you know.
Mhm,
So it's
mhm.
just about consistently being wet and then removing that moisture the best you can. And I mean, sometimes it's just you're dealt a crappy hand, but like I said, every winter I fight it and I've figured it out now. And so the best thing is once you get it, if you get it on the soil, you got to scoop up the handful of soil that it's on and get rid of it because it can fester in your soil, especially if you live in a cool area. It gets
Mhm.
hot and dry enough here where it doesn't really persist that much, but it could be an issue. So
Okay.
there you go, Ellis. And I'm sorry that you don't have you have doorknob cabbages. I sympathize with you. And now, thank you, Karma. So does Miss Batavia.
Garden karma, man. I've convinced myself that these are the perfect personalized personal size
See,
cabbage. It's perfect.
make lemonade out of lemons. You know.
Mhm. Here, here.
All right. So thank you. If you'd like to be like Ellis, you want to send us a question, you can do so through Facebook, YouTube, or use our email, bygquestion@gmail.com. We are open to all and any questions or comments. So please do so. And on that note, on this show, we do two things and we try to do them as best as we can. We learn to grow and we grow for change.
See ya.